Playing Escape from Tarkov with cheaters is like joining a competitive soccer match. Everyone's laced up, respecting the lines, giving it their all, but then there's that one guy who's allowed to go offside whenever he wants. He takes free penalty kicks whenever he feels like it. He can handle the ball, shove players without fouls, and still gets the same trophy at the end. And you're supposed to keep playing like it's fair? That's not competition, that's not skill. And the guy doing it doesn't look like a genius. He looks like a child playing by playground rules in an adult league. Grown-ups understand something that Piaget described decades ago. Rules aren't limitations, they're what make the game. When someone breaks them, they're not clever, they're just refusing to grow up. And in a group setting, they look like a idiot. There's something deeply unsettling happening in Escape from Tarkov. Not just the usual gear fear, the brutal AI, or the sound of boots echoing across reserve. Something deeper. A creeping sense that the game itself is losing its meaning. Veteran players are logging off for good. Newcomers are rage quitting after one too many deaths they can't explain. And beneath it all, there's a growing consensus. This game doesn't feel fair anymore. Not because Tarkov is supposed to be fair, it never was, but because it no longer feels just. The invisible rules that made the experience feel hard but earned have started to collapse under the weight of cheating, exploits, and developer silence. And strangely, a Swiss psychologist born in 1896 saw this coming. Jean Piaget and his groundbreaking studies on children, games, and moral development revealed a simple truth. When people no longer believe the rules matter, the game dies. Not with a bang, but with apathy, quiet exits, lost meaning. This isn't just a gameplay problem, it's a psychological breakdown. Let's explore what Piaget discovered and how it explains why Escape from Tarkov is bleeding players and soul. Jean Piaget spent decades observing how children engage with the world. Not just how they think, but how they play. In his work, The Moral Judgment of the Child, he studied how kids make sense of rules, cooperation, and fairness while playing games. He discovered that our relationship to rules evolves as we mature, and categorized this development into 3 stages. Number 1, pre-moral stage, 0 to 5 years old. At this early stage, children don't really understand rules. They play for fun, experimenting with actions without concern for structure or fairness. Number 2, heteronymous morality, from 5 to 10 years old. Now kids start following rules, but they view them as unchangeable laws imposed by authority figures. Morality is based on outcomes, not intentions, and punishment is assumed to always be deserved. Number 3, autonomous morality, 10 years or older. Here's the key shift. Older children realize that rules are social agreements. Fairness, negotiation, and cooperation become central. They don't follow rules because they're told to. They follow them because they want the game to continue for everyone's sake. In other words, mature players voluntarily uphold the rules because they understand that the survival of the game itself depends on it. Tarkov isn't like most shooters. There's no scoreboard, no instant gratification. The game thrives on risk, loss, tension, and perseverance. What makes Tarkov special is that every decision, from your gear to your exit, matters. But for all its realism and complexity, Tarkov only works when most players respect the same limitations. Its systems, vision, sound, recoil, fatigue, inventory, are designed around a shared set of expectations. When you die in Tarkov, it's supposed to hurt, but it's also supposed to make sense. You were too loud, you got outflanked, you misjudged the extract timer, and you stepped on a landmine. But when players start dying to invisible enemies with radar hacks, speed boosts, and perfect recoil control, that emotional logic collapses. Tarkov starts to feel unfair, not in the immersive, gritty way, but in the pointless, broken way. Now, here's where Piaget's insights become chillingly relevant. Cheaters act like players that are stuck in the pre-moral or heteronymous stages. Basically, they act like children. They either disregard the rules entirely, seeing them as meaningless, or they treat the game as a rigid system to be gamed and broken, as long as they avoid consequences. To them, winning is all that matters, not how they win or what it does to the game's integrity. Legit players operate from autonomous morality. They follow rules even when it hurts, because they understand that the challenge only matters if it's mutual. They invest time, gear, and emotion into Tarkov not because they expect to always win, but because they want the game to continue and to mean something. And Piaget found a crucial breaking point. When rule-following players realize that others are constantly cheating, they stop playing. Not out of anger, but because the game loses meaning. And that's where Tarkov is now. The social contract is fraying, and even those who love the game are asking, what's the point of extracting if the rules don't matter anymore? So this isn't all about wall hacks or aimbots, it's about the psychological erosion of the game. Risk is no longer emotional, it's arbitrary. The beauty of Tarkov is that every raid feels like a story, a tense, nerve-wracking crawl through gunfire and shadows, but if you die to someone exploiting the map or tracking you through a wall, that emotional tension is replaced with frustration and distrust. The system can no longer be trusted. Piaget showed that mature players follow rules by choice, but they also expect reciprocity. If they see the system consistently failing to punish violators, they'll disengage. And that's what's happening. Players no longer trust the match they're in. They're looking over their shoulder for the code, not the PMC. Community respect is replaced by suspicion. The Tarkov community once bonded over shared suffering, but now every death is questioned. Cheaters are so widespread that paranoia becomes the new normal, and that eats away at culture, connection, and fun. Basically, fairness is punished. Ironically, the more you play Tarkov as intended, the more you suffer. You farm for hours only to get wiped by someone who doesn't follow the rules. And you know what Piaget says happens when that becomes the norm? Players walk away. At the core of Piaget's philosophy is a truth that's hard to swallow. When people no longer believe the rules are real, they stop believing the game is real. Tarkov isn't dying because it's hard. It's dying because it no longer feels just. The very players who cared more about Tarkov, the ones who believed in its vision, are the ones leaving. Because the social contract is broken. This isn't just a technical issue, it's a psychological collapse, a moral failure, a loss of trust that no hotfix or ban wave alone can repair. So basically, if you want Tarkov to live, you have to make it worth playing. Piaget showed us that the will to play depends on trust in the rules and trust in others. Without that, a game stops being a game and becomes a meaningless grind. Escape from Tarkov once felt like a warzone simulator. Now it feels like a social experiment in watching trust erode. If Battlestate Games wants to save Tarkov, they can't just patch the code. They need to rebuild the culture, restore transparency, and reestablish why anyone should believe in the game at all. Because once that trust is gone, there's no loot worth keeping. Now let's dive into some of the psychological profiles of Tarkov cheaters. I'm going to go through 5 of them. Number 1, the morally underdeveloped player. Rules are for other people. Psychologist Jean Piaget and later Lawrence Kohlberg studied how humans develop morality. Some people never fully matured beyond pre-conventional thinking, meaning they see rules as things to avoid getting punished for, not as shared agreements. These players don't care about the fairness of the match. If they can win and not get caught, it's justified. In Tarkov, they treat raids like puzzles to be solved with shortcuts. Winning is the only goal. How they get there? Doesn't matter. These are the players who don't blink when they toggle a radar or use ESP. They don't see Tarkov as a shared experience. They see it as a personal exploit challenge. Number 2, the narcissist and the manipulator. I deserve to win because I'm better. Then you've got the ones driven by narcissism and Machiavellianism, classic dark triad traits. They're not just cheating to win, they're cheating to dominate, to flex, to prove they're above you and the system. These players don't just want your loot, they want your humiliation. In Tarkov, they'll camp spawns, use radar, kill you with perfect shots, and then taunt you if they can. It's not enough to win. They need to feel superior. and breaking the rules is their way to show it. We have the control freak. The game's unfair, so I'm leveling the playing field. Some cheaters aren't purely evil. They cheat because they've convinced themselves they have to. Psychologists call this an external locus of control, where people believe the world is against them, and they're not responsible for their failures. In Tarkov, these are the players who die a few times and say, the game's rigged. Everyone else is cheating, so why not me? They don't see themselves as cheaters, they see themselves as survivors, victims of a broken game. Their cheating is rationalized as justice, not sabotage. The insecure and fearful player. I'm not good enough without help. This type doesn't cheat to destroy others, they cheat because they're scared to fail. Maybe they've played for hundreds of hours and still lose gear constantly. Maybe they're terrified of PvP and can't win fights, so they install a soft cheat, a radar, a recoil mod, just to even the odds, just to feel like they can keep up. Underneath the hacks is anxiety, and a fear of being exposed as a bad player. They don't want to dominate, they just don't want to feel helpless anymore. Then we have the desensitized and normalized cheater. Everyone's doing it, why shouldn't I? This is the most dangerous type. Not because they're most malicious, but because they're the most contagious. These cheaters enter Tarkov, see how common cheating is, and say, well, if you can't beat them, join them. In psychology, this is called normative behavior. When people do something unethical because the environment permits or even encourages it, the longer cheating goes unpunished, the more normal it feels. And soon it spreads, not from malice, but from cultural decay. This is what devs should fear the most. Not just the hackers, but the mentality that cheating is no big deal. Escape from Tarkov was never meant to be fair in a traditional sense, but it was meant to be shared. A challenge where everyone faced the same danger, where dying meant something, and surviving meant even more. But when cheaters dominate, that emotional structure collapses. You're not scared of a game anymore, you're scared it's pointless. And the tragedy is, the players who love Tarkov the most, the ones who care about immersion, tension, and mastery, are the ones who leave first. Because it's not fun being the only one following the rules in a rigged game. Now, let's look at the reasoning for why some people actually cheat. It could be insecurity and low self-worth. For example, if I can't win fairly, I'll win by any means, just so I don't feel like a loser. Many cheaters suffer from deep-seated insecurities. They may fear failure, feel inferior to others, struggle with self-image tied to performance. And this could be due to maybe childhood environments where failure was shamed, overemphasis on external validation, like you're only good if you win, or they don't have a healthy framework of coping with loss or struggle. The second reason could be poor moral development or lack of cooperative learning. And this again follows along psychologist Piaget and Kohlberg's work, in that morality is something that we develop. These players may have never fully matured past the early moral stages, where rules are seen as obstacles and not agreements, or they lacked positive cooperation experiences as children, whether it's team sports, group games, maybe issues with their family or siblings. It's that thought, if I can get away with it, why wouldn't I? Number 3, bullying or powerlessness in childhood. Some cheaters, especially those who are aggressive or vindictive, may be subconsciously reenacting early experiences of powerlessness, being bullied or excluded or ignored. In a game like Tarkov, cheating allows them to control outcomes in a world where control is rare, punish others in the way they were once punished, but it's a hollow kind of justice, a band-aid over a deeper emotional wound. They may just straight up lack empathy. Cheating also correlates directly with low empathy and low emotional intelligence. Some individuals can't imagine how their actions affect others. They view players as NPCs and not people, and they treat the game as a sandbox for domination, not for shared space. This mindset can develop from emotional neglect in childhood, environments where empathy wasn't modeled or rewarded, or overexposure to toxic online cultures that normalize cruelty and selfishness. And finally, the last reason someone might cheat is addiction to control or achievement. They might have that mindset, if I'm not winning, I'm not okay. Some cheaters are not addicted to the game, but to the feeling of control, dominance, or progression it gives them. They need consistent positive feedback, like kills, loot, status, leveling up faster than other people. Maybe they need to escape from a real life frustration or failure. Maybe a win is to feel okay emotionally. These individuals often treat games like therapy, but it's an unhealthy and destructive way of doing so. So in summary, cheating isn't always just about being a jerk. It's often a symptom of something deeper: insecurity, arrested development, trauma, or unmet emotional needs. Obviously, that doesn't excuse the behavior, but it sort of explains it, and shows why simply banning cheaters doesn't address the root cause. If you were never taught to value fairness, if you were punished for losing, if you were humiliated by others and never healed from it, the cheating feels less like a crime and more like survival. But in doing so, they're not just ruining the game, they're repeating the very pain they never resolved, and now they're spreading it to everyone else. So, just to summarize, here's my grand conclusion. Escape from Tarkov isn't just a video game. It's a psychological ecosystem, one built on tension, fairness, and consequence. It's a place where every decision has weight, every loss has meaning, and every survival tells a story. Tarkov isn't about kill-death ratios or flashy leaderboards. It's about respect for risk, respect for grind, and most importantly, respect for the rules that make the experience possible. And that's why cheating in Tarkov isn't just frustrating, it's devastating. Not because it breaks the mechanics, but because it breaks the culture. It breaks the game. It violates the silent agreement between players, the one that says, we're all gonna suffer the same consequences, and we're going to rise or fall by how well we adapt, and not how well we cheat. From a psychological standpoint, we know that cheating often stems from deeper issues. Some cheat out of insecurity because they can't cope with failure. Others cheat to regain a sense of control they'd lost elsewhere in life. Some were never taught to cooperate or respect rules, and some do it simply because the environment allows it. No matter the reason, the outcome is the same. They unravel the very fabric that makes Tarkov meaningful. When one player gets to step outside the rules, to take free penalty kicks in a game the rest of us are playing honestly, the experience becomes a joke. Not just unfair, but pointless. And just like Piaget taught us, when people no longer believe in the rules, they stop playing the game altogether. Not out of rage, not out of salt, but because what's the point of playing something that's no longer real? Tarkov's culture was built on shared suffering, mutual respect, and the thrill of surviving against the odds. But if cheating continues unchecked, if players keep seeing this system exploited without consequence, that culture dies. Not with a massive exodus, but with a slow, quiet fade. So if BSG wants to save Tarkov, they don't just need better anti-cheat, they need to rebuild trust. They need to remind players that rules still matter, that fairness isn't weakness, and that honor still exists inside the brutal Russian hellscape of Tarkov. Because in the end, Tarkov isn't great because it's hard. It's great because we agreed, silently, collectively, to suffer through it together. Break that argument, and you break the game.